Hello, good afternoon. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you on Friday afternoon in Chicago to talk some more. Yes, to talk some more. I'm basically helping teachers get comfortable for going back into the classroom with being able to give. Let me turn some things off around here, being able to give some insights on different things that we really don't think about until after we get into the classroom. But if you cover some activities or some things before you get into the classroom, it sort of helps. It really helps. So today we're talking about becoming active listeners, and that can be for students and teachers. And we as an adults, I looked up the information because it's sometimes this is something that we take for granted, which is not good, because we can stand in front of students and just teach and talk and talk and teach and talk, and then when we are asking them, what did I say, so on and so forth, a lot of times they can't tell you what you said. And I just sort of looked on line for some skills that basically, in a definition, basically the definition, active listening is an important skill because it helps a person become an effective communicator. And we all want to become communicators, especially if we can talk. It's interesting how children that may be deaf, deaf, and how they communicate with their hands. Now, it's interesting because if we know that a child is deaf and they communicate with sign language, we have a tendency of looking at that child with that sign language a lot more because we're trying to read exactly what they're saying. We're very interesting. Everything that their hands do is very important as to how they are communicating. But we have a tendency as regular adults or regular people that have all of our facilities. We have the listening, hearing, talking, smelling, the five senses. If our five senses are in place, we have a tendency of taking all of those things for granted, and it keeps us from becoming not for not becoming good communicators, because you can communicate with all of the five senses: your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth. You can communicate and your touch and touch. You can communicate very well with all of those five senses. But the best and the most important out of all of those is listening with your ears. Listening, because once you hear something, you internalize it as to what it means and what it wants you to do. Another point, it says it's necessary for every stage of life. It's necessary for every stage of life, from childhood to adulthood. And if we were to assess ourselves right now, could we basically say that we are good listeners? I'm going to assess myself and say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. My biggest problem is talking while someone else is talking. That's what I do. And if I'm talking while they're talking, that means I'm not listening to them. I don't have the ability to hear what they're saying or listen to them. So if I'm running my mouth while they are talking, I haven't heard half of what they said. And to keep interrupting them, it's another bad habit I have. My daughter tells me about that all the time. Is something that sort of stands in place, and it gets in the way of me being an active listener. An active listener has to do certain things. You can stand there and someone is talking to you, but you're not necessarily hearing what they say, or you may hear two or three words, but you haven't digested as to what they're telling you, what they're interpreting through their speech. So it says during childhood, active listening helps kids to both in school and in their social lives. So this is something that's ongoing through life. Active listening is the key to becoming a better learner and in forming lasting friendships. You know, think about your best friends. Think about your best friends and how why it becomes your best friend, because you have a tendency of listening to them. They will call you, and because they know you're going to hear them out, or going to be that you're that basically that person they feed into when they have issues or problems and things like that. That's what makes you a good friend to someone. If you are an active listener, that's a good social skill to have with individuals. One more thing, it says once a child grows up, active listening is necessary to succeed in college, in the workforce, and developing friendships, relationships, and eventually even in marriage. Wow. A lot of us have failed that because we're not active listeners with some of our partners. But going back to the classroom, I feel it's going to be very important for teachers to establish active listening that first day of class. I'll say that again. It is going to be important for teachers to establish active listening that first day in class. And if you go online, you'll find a lot of activities that helps this out. Like I told you before, what I do with my students and what I have done in the past is I usually have a CD player and I play a tape, classical music, and sort of tunes their ears into the music, but it's at the same time. It makes them very active in what they're doing, what's in front of them, whatever lessons have been laid out in front of them for them to do. And so that's the type of thing I do for them being active listeners. But some of the other activities, they would say playing games. I read about one where they said that if you're listening with the younger children, you give them like a storybook, a coloring book. And as you're reading or making up a story about that particular coloring book, if the child hears that particular animal's name or hears something that you're saying that's on the page in front of them, they're supposed to color it. And that basically keys them into listening to what you're saying. They are also saying that active listeners participate with their ears, but they participate with their whole bodies. They can when someone is talking to you, you're shaking your head up and down, saying that you understand them, or shaking your head back and forth, saying that you don't understand. And then what that gives that person that's talking and the opportunity to go back and just repeat, or either give a little bit more explanation as to what they were saying, breaking it down a little bit better. So these are the type of things that we want to look at. So that first day of class, like I have found out, like the last 10 years of my teaching experience, what I found that I needed to do was to establish a very good classroom management plan the beginning of the school year. And sometimes that classroom management plan took at least about 3 or 4 weeks for me to establish, because I understood that if I established that classroom management plan in the beginning of the year, that was going to make my school year easier as far as teaching. And part of that classroom management plan is, of course, active listening. And just even the first day, when all of the children are excited or whatever like that, you can take a bell or you can flip the lights on and off and whatever. Anything that grabs their attention is what's going to be important and very, very, very important as you teach throughout the school year. So that's something that you have to practice, and you have to see what works for that particular group of children, because every year is something different. Every year is something different. Remember one year I I produced a puppet, and that particular puppet was basically carrying little signs. Okay, time to be quiet and whatever. And the children, that particular, even though they were third grade, they were active, and they were excited about seeing that puppet. And when that puppet would be on my hand and he would hold up a sign about being quiet, line up, or something like that, those students would obey that puppet before they obeyed me. But that was a part of my active listening strategy to get them to pay attention to what they needed to pay attention to. Let me see. I read something. It said, "We're all ears. What is your favorite way to encourage active listening at home or in the classroom? We'd love to hear from you." And they talk about going on to Facebook and people just expressing themselves, especially through classroom management, as to what works and what don't work. And of course, with the older children, it's something, sometimes it's a totally different situation. You have to basically look at the group that you have in front of them. and find out what works, find out their mindset, what makes them stand up and sit up and pay attention, what makes them, what gets them to listen to you. I tried one time to, while because I love to read to my children, I usually take a novel and I would read that novel at the end of the day. So they would be looking for me to read at the end of the day. And one time they had just gotten so excited about whatever we were doing during the day that they couldn't calm down. So I sat in front of the classroom with my book and I was whispering the words. I was whispering the words, you know. Now, this was a one time thing, but it did work. And I was whispering the words. And some of the children basically tapped into their friends. Hey, Miss Davis is reading. I want to hear what she's saying. I want to hear what she's saying. So that produced, and them looking at me and knowing that they wanted to hear what I was reading made them become active listeners. And also with the reading techniques, for children, if you get a group of children reading and reading in a group or whatever like that, and then you set up where you want them to pay attention to the characters and what the characters look like, what the characters sound like. Can you draw a picture of this particular character? What did the characters say? All of those are forms of active listening. So active listening is something that you do throughout the day so that a child continues it. And then throughout the week, you want to practice it with different skills and different activities so that the children can continue to be active listeners. One time I even told the children to go home. This was their homework assignment. Go home and have a conversation with the parents or the adult in the house. And I said, and I want you to write down at least 5 things. I said, both of you take a piece of paper and I want you to, both of you, you're the adult and you as the student, to write down 5 things that you talked about and then exchange papers to see how exact you were. And as you interpret or actively listen to each other. And the children came back that next day. They were so excited. And some of them were somewhat frustrated. They said, my mama didn't listen to anything I said, which was funny to me. My mama doesn't listen to me at all. And so what I did then, the next thing that I did is I was able to send home some paperwork, or either, parents teaching them how to be active listeners to their children, which also help them be active listeners as adults. So it's an ongoing thing. Let me see if I have anything else that I think would be interesting. Like we said before, it's a skill that has to be practiced. It has to be practiced. It's just like breathing. And once you get into the point of where you're practicing it, you'll be surprised as how much you hear. And I do it with my audio books. I'll listen to an audio book, maybe one particular chapter, and then I know that I have been an active listener if I can go back and hear what that particular chapter was about all over again. And it just excites me because, oh my goodness, I didn't hear that the first time. But I have a tendency of hearing it the second time. So I'm saying also that you're not going to grasp active listening immediately. It takes a skill, and especially especially we as adults, we have not taken that skill and embraced it the way we're supposed to. But we want to start embracing it we want to take it and teach it to our students. We want to teach it to our children because it's a very, very important part of life that you become an active listener. So you can Google it and find out, because they have lots of activities that you can do in the classroom that will help you build these skills up. And then some things you'll find out that you can do yourself. You want the children to practice it in the classroom, but at the same time, you want them to practice it at home. You want them to practice it with each other, even setting them up with each other. I specifically put my children in groups. And in those groups, I have a leader, and I practice active listening with the leaders, so that if the leader is talking to the group of students that are around them, what did that leader say? Because I've given them a task to tell you guys on what to do. And so how many of you heard the leader and what the leader said? And can you repeat it? Can you write it down? Can you repeat the steps? Can you write down the steps as to what they want you to do? And once these skills, it's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be immediate, but if you started the first day of school, and just have at least one activity every day, you'll be surprised how soon your students are just basically embracing the skill of active listening, and before you know it, being that a part of it also helps you, like I said before, your classroom management. So as that happens and as you embrace all of that, you'll be surprised how easy it is to teach your students. One more tip from Aurelia Davis, the educators. I hope you were able to learn something from this. If you're interested in more things, or you would like to give me some information or give me some activities to go along with this to share with others, I would love to hear from you. Go to aureliadavis.com. Love hearing from you, and have a great afternoon and a nice weekend, because it is Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.